The scent of roasting beef usually filled my kitchen with warmth, a familiar comfort clinging to the worn wooden cabinets and the chipped porcelain sink. For 12 long years, ever since David, my late husband, had passed, this small, unassuming house was my sanctuary and my meticulously guarded savings account. My lifeline, every coupon clipped, every secondhand garment chosen over new, every tea bag dried for a second use. It was all for one singular, shimmering dream: to finally see the world. Morocco, Paris, Peru. These weren't just names on glossy travel guides. They were whispers of a freedom I promised myself before bed, a future I meticulously built, coin by precious coin. People thought I'd crumble after David, that I'd be content with my quiet life, a harmless old woman. They thought my gentle demeanor meant weakness. They were wrong. So utterly, profoundly wrong. That night, hosting my son Greg and his polished wife Lisa for dinner, my hands trembled not from age, but from the hopeful anticipation of a perfect family evening. I'd fussed over the table, ironed the napkins, poured my own less expensive wine, while Lisa flaunted her costly bottle, pretending not to notice the subtle snubs. I wanted it to feel like family again. But then the laughter drifted in from the dining room, light and sharp, a sound that would forever haunt me. God, she's such a fossil. Lisa's voice floated, laced with amused disdain. Still talking about that travel dream like she's Indiana Jones or something. Bless her, really. 12 years of saving coins and coupons for fantasy trips she's never taking. Not anymore. My stomach dropped. My legs went cold. I stood frozen behind the kitchen wall, barely breathing. But the true devastation, the soul-crushing blow came next. She won't be going anywhere now, Lisa continued, her words dripping with casual cruelty. Greg and I reallocated the funds for the boutique. It's technically a joint account. She won't even notice. We needed a jump start, and honestly, better her money serves some actual purpose. And then, the sound that shattered my world into 1,000 irreparable pieces, Greg's laugh. My son, my only son, laughed. He laughed. I gripped the countertop, knuckles white, my heart pounding a mocking, steady beat in my ears. They had stolen from me. Not borrowed, not asked, but stolen. And worse, they had done it with pride in my own home over the dinner I'd cooked, at the very table my late husband had built. In that brutal, gut-wrenching moment, something inside me snapped. The fear, the politeness, the ingrained desire to please, it all evaporated. I didn't storm in, I didn't shout. I simply walked out with the tray of dinner rolls, a serene smile plastered on my face, as if I didn't feel like a ghost at my own table, as if I hadn't just overheard my entire retirement dream being laughed at like a bad joke. "Marlene, this spread smells amazing," Lisa chirped, meeting my eyes with a polite smile. "Thank you, dear," I replied softly, my voice steady. I made it myself. And in that silent, chilling exchange, a different kind of plan, cold and precise, began to form in the depths of my mind. I saw clearly, for the first time, what I had been missing for them all these years. A vault they thought would never lock. The house mine, the savings mine, the retirement I'd postponed, the travel dreams I'd shelved, the sacrifices I'd made, also mine. But they had loved my money more than me. I placed the bread on the table, sat down beside my son, and made small talk about the weather. But behind my eyes, the numbers were already adding up. 12 years of frugal living, dozens of unopened travel guides. A woman dismissed too many times as harmless. They thought they'd won, that I'd be too old, too polite, too grateful to fight back. They forgot one crucial detail: quiet doesn't mean weak. And as Lisa reached across me for more wine, my wine, laughing with her perfect nails and perfect lipstick, I felt something unexpected stir in my chest. Not rage, not grief, but resolve. They had just bought themselves a storm they couldn't predict, and I was done being polite about it. The night after the dinner, I sat in my quiet living room, wrapped in David's old knit shawl, the streetlight flickering outside like a dying firefly. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. 12 years I had meticulously saved. After David's passing, people had expected me to crumble, and perhaps for a while I did. I wore his flannel shirts around the house like armor. I talked to him through the walls. I bought those travel books not because I thought I'd leave the next day, but because I needed something to look forward to, a promise I whispered to myself before bed. The maps came first, folded, creased, circled in red ink, then the guidebooks, then the travel magazines. I'd collect postcards from friends who traveled and tape them to the fridge. Paris, Peru, Kyoto, Barcelona. My refrigerator looked like a collage of someone else's freedom. I lived modestly. Couponing, shopping secondhand, taking my tea bags out to dry for second use. When people asked why I never replaced the peeling linoleum or got a new car, I'd joke, I'm waiting to cash in all my airline miles. But the truth was, I didn't spend because I wanted to see the world. I wanted to see myself again. Somewhere along the way, between David's death, Greg's career taking off, and Lisa moving in, I stopped being a person with dreams and became an accessory. The doting mother, the built-in babysitter, the emergency fund. Greg had always been kind growing up, protective even. He used to get into fights at school if anyone said something mean about me. When David died, he cried in my lap for an hour. But Lisa had a way of turning everything warm into something transactional. At first, she was sweet, helpful. Let me handle the groceries this time, Marlene. You shouldn't be paying for the plumber. Let us. And then it changed. You don't need 2 bedrooms, right? Why not keep one account for convenience? Think of it like a safety net for all of us. And I fell for it, not because I trusted her, but because I trusted him. I sat on that couch, surrounded by dreams I hadn't yet lived. And I realized something cold and final. I had been slowly erased. Every sacrifice, every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. Every time I smiled through a moment that broke my heart, it had led to this. Them sitting in my kitchen calling me a fossil, using my money to chase their dreams, while mine sat in glossy books under the coffee table. I picked one up. Morocco. The pages had fingerprints from how many times I'd flipped through it. I opened to the photo of the Sahara, golden dunes stretching into eternity. That had always been the first stop, a camel ride at sunrise, a tent under the stars. I traced the image with my finger, and I swear I could hear David's voice beside me. You're not too old, Marlene. You're just not finished. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just theft. This was a declaration that they didn't believe I'd ever get there, that I'd always be around, conveniently small and quiet, a piggy bank dressed like a person. But they were wrong. I might not be young. I might not move as fast as I used to. But I was not done, and I wasn't going to let them write the ending of my story with my own money. They thought they took everything, but what they really gave me was motive. The next morning, I sat in the bank lobby staring at the artificial ficus plant in the corner, like it might give me answers. It wasn't even the first time I'd been here that week. Greg had insisted we keep the accounts joint for emergencies, but every time I asked for a statement or tried to set up online banking, he or Lisa would say, "Don't worry about it, Mom. We've got it under control." Under control, right. That phrase used to mean something comforting when Greg said it. When he was a boy, he'd stand at the top of the basement stairs holding a flashlight for David and yell, "Dad, I've got it under control." The flashlight would tremble in his little hand, but he meant it. That boy, he was brave. I don't know when he became a man who'd let someone else speak for him, who'd let his wife skim thousands off his own mother's savings and then laugh about it like it was clever, like I was a fool. The woman behind the glass smiled mechanically. "Is there something specific you're looking for, Mrs. Donahue?" I cleared my throat. Yes, I'd like to see the transaction history for my joint checking account ending in 2743. Just routine review. She typed something, looked at her screen, and then froze. Uh, I'm sorry. It appears your account access has been changed. Only Mr. Greg Donahue and Mrs. Bury, Lisa Donahue, are listed as authorized online users. I felt something cold trickle down my spine. I'm the account holder. It was owned in my name. Yes, she said carefully, but the settings designate them as the primary users. We'd need their consent to reauthorize your online access or make modifications. My mouth went dry. I didn't set it that way. She offered that same lifeless smile. It may have been updated during your last joint appointment. The last appointment. I remembered a year ago, Greg had said, "Let me take care of the paperwork, Mom." It's just signatures. I signed where he pointed. Like a fool. I left the bank without another word. My purse felt heavier than usual, like it was carrying more than just receipts and lip balm. I kept hearing Lisa's voice in my head. She won't even notice. They thought I didn't notice. I noticed everything. I noticed how Greg had started calling less after they got married, how holidays became maybe next year, how Lisa would volunteer to run errands with my debit card and come back with boutique bags that just happened to be on sale, how Greg started deflecting real conversations with "Lisa, thanks," or "we decided." They called it protection. I called it slow erasure. I sat on the bus ride home, gripping the bar, teeth clenched. I kept thinking, what kind of man lets this happen to his mother? I raised him better than this. I raised him to stand up for what's right. I raised him to protect family, not pillage it. But maybe the worst part was realizing he didn't care enough to even lie well. He didn't hide the money. He didn't soften the betrayal. He let me sit at the dinner table while they joked about siphoning my life savings like I was just a stupid old woman. Maybe that's who I became to him, but not to me. By the time I got off the bus, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them keep pretending I didn't exist. I was done being handled. From now on, I was going to handle things myself. The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and dust. I liked it. It didn't try to impress you. The kind of place where no one asked if you wanted oat milk, just milk or nothing. Darren sat across from me in a faded button-up and a face that still carried pieces of our high school years. Same crooked grin, same eyes that had once held mine too long at prom. We hadn't seen each other in over a decade, reconnected only because I remembered through a fog of memories that Darren worked in finance now. Quiet guy, no fanfare, trusted. I appreciate you doing this, I said, cupping my hands around the ceramic mug. I know it's not typical. He raised an eyebrow. Marlena, you were the one who helped me pass trig senior year. You want me to look at some bank statements? I'm not about to say no. I handed him the file I'd pieced together. Printouts from what little I could scrape through the ATM history. Some mailed statements and screenshots Lisa had carelessly left open on my home computer once. I'd started gathering them 2 days ago. Pretending I couldn't remember how to log in had earned me a few pitying glances and zero suspicion. They really thought I was slipping. He flipped through the stack, his smile fading with every page. Jesus. He muttered. You weren't kidding. Nope, I replied quietly. This isn't oversight. This is patterned behavior. These withdrawals, this one and this one, he tapped 2 red marks I'd circled. They're all linked to a Square reader registered under Greg's name. And Lisa's boutique account is the destination for 2 of these transfers. He looked up at me slowly. You've been funding their business. I stared at the scratched surface of the table, without being asked, without being told. He whistled under his breath. You know this is elder financial abuse, right? If you reported this. I'm not ready for that yet, I said sharply. I just needed to know if I was crazy, if I'd imagined it. You're not crazy, he leaned back. You've got a paper trail here that's cleaner than half the fraud cases I've handled. A laugh escaped me, bitter and low. Guess I missed my calling. He slid the folder back to me. You want me to help you go further? I shook my head. Not yet. They still think I don't know. That's my advantage. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Whatever you need, you call me. Outside, the wind had picked up. I pulled my coat tighter around me and walked home slowly, the folder pressed to my chest like armor. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel helpless. I felt angry. Cold, clear, surgical anger. They hadn't just taken my money, they'd taken my name off my own accounts, gaslit me into thinking I was forgetful, convinced me I was being dramatic for asking questions. They'd used every insecurity a woman my age is taught to carry. You're not tech savvy, you're lucky we help, you're too old to manage all this alone. But they were wrong. So wrong. And now I had proof. I had witnesses. And most importantly, I had patience. They wanted to play me like I was slow and harmless. Fine, let them. They wouldn't hear me coming until it was too damn late. I started keeping a notebook, a plain black one I found in the bottom drawer of David's old desk. Used to be his for tracking car maintenance. Now it was mine for tracking betrayal. Every time Lisa bragged about some brand launch or Greg complained that a supplier wanted full payment up front, I'd smile and nod. Then I'd write it down. Date, time, exact words. I even started leaving my phone out on the table, screened down, recording voice memos while they gossiped and bickered and unknowingly incriminated themselves. They never noticed. Why would they? I was just Marlene, sweet old Marlene, the one who made too much potato salad and didn't understand hashtags. They talked freely in front of me like I was deaf or dead. One evening, Lisa came over in a velvet blazer, deep emerald, probably designer. She sipped from the wine I paid for and dropped her latest victory like a gift onto my dining room table. I convinced Greg to order the new office couch from that Italian brand. You should have seen it, Marlene. Real leather, low profile, very luxe. Cost a fortune, but you have to spend big to attract big. My stomach churned. That's lovely, dear. And how's business going? Lisa laughed, flicking her hair. We're still writing the cash injection you gave us. Best unintentional investor ever. Unintentional investor. She said it with such ease, such audacity. Greg was no better. A week later, he mentioned their emergency website redesign. I asked how they paid for it. Oh, we pulled from the emergency fund. You know, your emergency fund. But the site looks amazing now. I recorded that too. At night, I sat in my little home office, headphones on, listening to their voices spill from the speakers like poison. Each clip another nail in the coffin of the story they told everyone, that I was involved, that I agreed, that I had no objections. I started printing things, lining up receipts, screenshotting social media posts, Lisa posing in front of gold-plated boutique shelving. Captioned, "Dreams do come true, Dizzy." Greg boasting about owning your future at some entrepreneurship seminar, standing next to a projector that had probably been bought with my travel fund. They thought they were building a legacy. They didn't realize it was evidence. Sometimes I'd pause the recordings and just stare out the window. The travel books were still there, lined up neatly beside the armchair, dusty now, but they didn't feel like fantasies anymore. They felt like fuel. And every smirk, every dig, every time they brushed off my questions with, "Don't worry about it," only added to the fire. The more I documented, the calmer I became. Not cold, focused. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't confront. I simply watched and waited. They never asked what I was writing when I scribbled in my notebook at the dinner table. Lisa probably assumed it was a shopping list. Greg never asked at all. I was invisible to them in the most convenient ways. Good, because what's more dangerous than a woman you don't think is watching? A woman who is. And I was watching everything. They gave me nothing but crumbs and mockery. I was about to give them something they'd never forget. That night, I sat alone in my bedroom, the lamp on low, printouts spread across the quilt like puzzle pieces I didn't want to solve but couldn't look away from. My hand trembled as I ran it across the latest bank statement. $3,400, 0 cents withdrawn for brand visuals, $2,100, 0 cents for interior design consultation, another $800, 0 cents for what Lisa had once proudly called the boutique vibe I had saved for over a decade. Skipped dinners out, patched old coats, watched friends fly off on cruises while I stayed behind and said maybe next year. And now my dreams were hanging on the walls of Lisa's Pinterest perfect shop, passed off as branding. My chest felt tight. I stood and walked to the window, pushing it open just enough to let in the cold. The air bit my skin. I welcomed it. It reminded me I was still alive, still mine. Then I heard his voice, not Greg's, David's. Not in sound, not really, but in memory. You're sharper than they think, Marlene, always have been. He used to say that after I beat him at Scrabble, after I negotiated down the price of a car without raising my voice, after I caught a lie Greg tried to get away with as a teenager. Back then, David had always made me feel like I saw through things, like I had instincts no one could fool. But I had been fooled by my own son. That was the part I couldn't shake, not the money, not Lisa's smugness. It was him, the boy who used to fall asleep on my shoulder after Little League games. The one who cried when I dropped him off at college and whispered, "Call me if you get lonely, Mom. Promise?" Where had that boy gone? Or had he just grown into a man I never wanted to know? I sat on the edge of the bed, statement in one hand, notebook in the other. I didn't cry, not really. I just leaked. The tears slid down my cheeks quietly. No sobbing, no heaving, just slow, exhausted grief. Grief for the years I'd spent loving people who didn't love me back the same way. Grief for every time I'd said, "It's okay, sweetie," when it wasn't. Grief for the quiet, brutal truth. They loved my money more than me. And yet, underneath that sadness, something else was taking root. Fury, maybe, but more than that, resolve. They'd taken my money, but they hadn't taken or my memory or my name. They hadn't taken me. And tonight, for the first time since the dinner where it all cracked open, I let myself say it out loud. They don't get another dollar. My voice was steady, soft, but final. I looked over at David's photo on the dresser. He was smiling, wearing that same flannel shirt I still kept in the closet. I reached for it, pulled it over my shoulders like armor. "I've got this," I whispered. "You raised a fighter. You just didn't know it yet." Then I reached under the bed and pulled out the lockbox. My original documents. My birth certificate, a copy of my will, some savings bonds, even Lisa didn't know existed. They thought they had access to everything, that I'd laid it all out, foolish and grateful. They were wrong. They hadn't even seen half of what I was capable of, and I was just getting started. I was at the bank before the lobby even opened. I parked 2 blocks away on purpose, just in case Greg or Lisa drove by. I didn't want questions. I didn't want witnesses. I wanted control. For the first time in years, I was taking it back. I wore my plainest coat, hair pulled back, no makeup, just the sharpness in my eyes and the folder pressed tight to my chest. Inside were the statements, the copies, the evidence, and most importantly, the legal documents that still listed me as the original account holder, not co-owner, not dependent. Me, the woman who opened that account with her first widow's benefit check and whispered, "This is where the rest of my life begins." "Good morning, ma'am. Do you have an appointment?" "I need to speak to a senior account manager," I said, calm but firm. "And I'm not leaving until I do." It didn't take long. I think they heard something in my voice. Not desperation, authority. 20 minutes later, I sat across from a middle-aged man named Peter, who looked like the kind of person who wore sunscreen religiously and had never missed a day of work in his life. Good. I needed that kind of order. "How can I help you today, Mrs. Donahue?" "I want to freeze all joint accounts that bear my name," I said evenly, effective immediately. "I want to remove all authorized users, revoke online access, and disable debit card activity on every card linked to me." He blinked. May I ask why? I didn't flinch. Because my son and his wife have been siphoning money out of my savings without my knowledge or consent. I believe I have sufficient documentation to prove it, and I no longer feel safe. Peter took one look at my folder and sat up straighter. I see. I'll need to verify a few things first. Please do. We went through each account step by step. I signed documents, provided IDs, answered every security question with the kind of sharpness they weren't expecting from someone they probably assumed was here to dispute a parking fee. Then I said the words I'd rehearsed a dozen times in the mirror. I'd like to open a new account solo under my maiden name, Marlene Ackerman. I'll be transferring a portion of my remaining funds there today. Peter hesitated. You're aware doing this may cause conflict. I'm aware, I said, my voice cool. But conflict has already come. I'm just choosing to stop funding it. He gave a slow, almost respectful nod. I'll make it happen. And he did. 20 minutes later, I walked out of that bank lighter, not richer, just cleaner. Like someone had finally scrubbed the mud off my name. I didn't text Greg. I didn't call Lisa. They'd find out the next time they tried to use the card or log in to check the balance that no longer belonged to them. Let them panic. Let them wonder. Let them taste the silence they'd fed me for years. When I got home, I put the new documents in my safe, changed the locks on the desk drawer they once had access to, and made myself a strong cup of tea. The sky was overcast. The wind picked up. I wasn't worried because that morning I did something they never expected me to do. I stopped asking permission, and I started protecting what was mine. They came in loud, didn't even knock. The front door slammed open like they paid the mortgage. Lisa was first, heels clicking on the wood floors like a judge entering a courtroom. Greg followed close behind, red in the face, voice already raised. Mom, what the hell did you do? I didn't flinch. I was standing in the living room folding towels, calm, focused, alive, in a way I hadn't felt in years. Lisa didn't even let me answer. Our boutique card declined, mid-payment with a supplier we desperately needed. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? I looked at her blankly. No, I don't imagine I do. Greg tossed his keys on the side table like he owned the house. We couldn't even pay rent on the pop-up space. It bounced. I tilted my head slightly, set the towel down. Must be tough, Lisa scoffed. Don't play innocent, Marlene. You froze the accounts. I met her eyes cool and clear. Yes, I did. Greg stepped forward, tone shifting to that pleading edge he used when he still believed charm was currency. Mom, you could have warned us, given us a chance to move money around. Plan things. You mean hide things? I asked, letting the word slice. His mouth snapped shut. Lisa's voice turned brittle. We're your family. You don't just cut off your family without a conversation. I smiled then, not kindly. Lisa, I hosted a dinner in this house, cooked the roast, set the table, sat there while you drank my wine and laughed about stealing my money. Don't talk to me about conversations. She looked stunned for a second, like she hadn't realized I was in the room that night, like I wasn't supposed to hear her. Greg started again. You don't understand. We're trying to build something that benefits the whole family. Oh, were you going to take me on your business retreats? I said dryly. Let me sleep under the desk in your leather-wrapped brand studio? Mom, no, I said sharply. We're not doing that, Greg. Not the guilt trip, not the soft voice. I'm not stupid, and I'm not yours to manage. Lisa folded her arms. This isn't just about money. I nodded slowly. No, it's about respect. And I finally realized, if you have none for me, I don't owe you comfort. There was a pause. Greg blinked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Then Lisa tried again, this time with venom. You'd really rather let us go under than support your own son's future. I stepped forward, towel still in hand, calm as the day is long. If you're adults enough to steal from me, you're adults enough to budget. Greg opened his mouth. closed it. I could see the exact second his brain started turning against him. His shoulders slumped just a little. "You always said you'd help me if I was in trouble," he said, voice smaller now. "And I always said I'd stand by you as long as you didn't lie to me," I replied. "You broke that." "Lisa broke that. And I won't fund dishonesty." Lisa shook her head, disgusted. "This is pathetic." "No," I said quietly. "What was pathetic was me sitting silent while you drained my savings, thinking love meant handing over pieces of myself." She rolled her eyes. "We'll sue," I shrugged. "The bank has records. The transactions are yours. You'd only be suing your own footprints." That shut her up. They left, eventually, Greg dragging Lisa by the elbow as she hissed about lawyers and reputations. The door slammed harder this time. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I picked up the last towel, folded it neatly, and placed it in the drawer. Then I poured myself a cup of tea. The silence felt earned this time, and I didn't miss them at all. The house was quiet again, not peaceful, just still. I sat on the couch, the laptop glowing in the dark, fingers hovering above the keyboard. For a moment, I hesitated, not out of fear, but out of grief, because the part they never tell you about drawing a line in the sand is what gets left on the other side. Sometimes it's your children. Sometimes it's the version of yourself who believed they'd never cross you. But I hit compose anyway. Subject: financial abuse documentation. Marlee Donahue. I attached everything: bank statements, voice recordings, screenshots of boutique expenses matched against my account activity. I typed a short, firm message to my lawyer, a woman named Ruthie, who once told me, "You're sharp, Marlene. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I was finally listening. My hands didn't shake, not even a little. I'd spent too many years second-guessing myself, too many dinners biting my tongue, too many moments blaming myself for being too trusting, when the truth was I just expected decency from people I loved, and now I knew better. I clicked send. The inbox blinked. Gone. No takebacks. I leaned back into the cushions and let the tension unspool. It was like releasing the final breath after a long, brutal swim underwater. I wasn't out of the storm, not yet, but at least now I was facing it head on, not drowning quietly inside it. The doorbell didn't ring that night, no apology, no knock, just the knowledge that somewhere across town they were realizing I'd shut the gates, and not temporarily. This was permanent. I imagined Lisa pacing, ranting about ungrateful parents, while Greg sat on the edge of their overpriced couch, checking his phone for account access that no longer existed. Good. Let them sit in that silence. Let them hear what it sounds like when the bank vault finally closes. I turned off the laptop and went to the kitchen. The clock said 10:04 a.m., but I wasn't tired. I stood there looking at the kettle, the same one I'd bought on clearance the year David passed. Still worked, still whistled. I put it on and waited the way I'd waited for so much else in life. But this time the waiting felt different, not desperate, not passive, prepared. The whistling started low, then grew, and I didn't turn it off right away. I just stood there listening because it reminded me of something. Just because it gets loud doesn't mean you have to run. You can stay. You can let it rise. You can pour your tea in the middle of the noise and drink it anyway. And that's exactly what I did. No one was going to rescue me from this, not Greg, not the bank, not justice. It was going to be me. And I was enough. In the morning, I'd start looking for someone to help me draft a formal claim. But tonight, I sat under the soft kitchen light, sipping tea, not waiting for anyone to change their mind, because I already had, and there was no going back. The cruise terminal was humming with life, rollers clacking, laughter echoing, announcements blaring over cheap speakers. It should have overwhelmed me. It didn't. I stood there, passport in hand, suitcase at my feet, heart steady. This was it. 12 years of saving, 1 year of being siphoned, and 3 months of clawing every inch of my dignity back. I wasn't here to escape. I was here to arrive. "Passenger name?" the clerk asked. "Marlena Crymon," I said, using my maiden name without flinching. Solo traveler, she smiled, handed me my boarding pass, and gestured me forward. The ship loomed massive and white, like a promise kept. I walked the ramp slowly, feeling the slight sway of the sea even before I stepped aboard, and when I did, no fanfare, no music, just me. On my own terms. My cabin was small but beautiful. Ocean view just like I'd booked. A folded towel shaped like a swan sat on the bed. A welcome letter addressed to Miss Ackerman. No mention of Mom, Mrs., or any other name that had ever come with strings. I unpacked slowly, hung up the 3 dresses I bought, secondhand but tailored to fit like armor, took out the little velvet pouch with David's wedding band and placed it on the desk beside the itinerary. "You got me this far," I whispered to him, "but I'll take it from here." Later, I stood on the deck, watching the port shrink behind me. Somewhere in that city were 2 people still choking on their own consequences, still trying to spin the story, still waiting for the version of me that begged to come back. But that version, she was at sea now. The breeze hit hard, but I didn't pull my coat tighter. I let it whip through my hair because I'd earned the wind. I'd earned the salt on my skin and the ache in my chest that came from choosing myself without apology. A woman leaned over next to me, maybe 60 or so, wrapped in a silk scarf. "First cruise?" she asked. I nodded. She smiled. "You're glowing." I laughed softly. "It's probably the justice." She raised a brow, amused. "Now, that's a story I want to hear. And maybe someday I'd tell it over wine and Mediterranean sunsets, without shame, without bitterness, just truth. Because what they did to me, it didn't define me. What I did next, that's what counted. In the distance, the water stretched wide and endless. For the first time in years, so did I. No family dinners with hidden knives, no gaslighting smiles, no need to ask, "Am I overreacting?" Because the answer had been no all along. I stayed on that deck until the last sliver of land disappeared. Then I turned away. Not to forget, but to begin, because closure isn't slamming a door, is boarding a ship with nothing left to prove. And when I lay down in that cabin, alone and whole, the silence didn't feel empty.